Some nights, I wake in a cold sweat, my heart pounding like I'm still that terrified girl in a faded blue dress, standing in the front room of our shotgun house. I'm 76 now, rocking on my Tennessee porch, silver hair tucked under a scarf, but the past doesn't let go so easily. It clings like Alabama red clay to bare feet, staining deep. Most folks see a sweet old lady who bakes cookies for her grandkids. They don't know the hell I walked through to get here, the weight of a childhood stolen on an ordinary Tuesday morning in 1962. My name is Mabel Ruth Calloway, and this is the story of how I lost everything, my dreams, my innocence, my family, and how, against all odds, I clawed my way back to something whole. I was born in 1948 in a speck of a town in northern Alabama, so small it barely had a name, just a crossroads with a general store, a Baptist church, and farms stretching between creeks and hollers. Our shotgun house was 5 rooms strung like beads, filled with 8 children and 2 tired parents. Daddy sharecropped cotton, his hands gnarled from decades in the fields, his face weathered like old leather. Mama kept us in line with a wooden spoon and Bible verses, her voice sharp but her eyes soft when she thought no one saw. I was the eldest girl, Mama's right hand by the time I could walk steady. By 10, I could cook breakfast, mind 4 younger siblings, wash clothes in the creek, and finish chores before sundown. School was a luxury, 3 miles away, snatched in winter when the ground was too hard for planting. Mrs. Wilson, my teacher, said I had a quick mind, slipping me books to read by kerosene lamp after the others slept. Those pages were my escape, dreams of places beyond our county line. We weren't the poorest around, but we lived on the knife's edge. Meat was Sunday food, cornbread and beans the daily fare. Store-bought sugar was a Christmas treat, my dolls were corn husks and scraps. Yet I had dreams, oh, did I have them? I'd climb the big oak behind our house, higher than my brothers dared, until I could see the Blue Ridge Mountains faint on the horizon. From those branches, the world seemed bigger than our hardscrabble patch. I'd plan my escape, maybe I'd teach, like Mrs. Wilson, or work in a Birmingham department store, or go to Nashville where music played all night. The Greyhound bus passed through twice a week, and I'd watch it, imagining where it could take me. I was 14 this summer. Everything changed, still sleeping on a pallet with my sisters, wearing hand-me-downs patched over patches, daydreaming in that oak tree. It was Alabama hot, the air heavy like a wool blanket fresh from the line. I was kneading biscuit dough, flour up to my elbows, when Daddy called me. His voice had that tone, sharp, final, that stopped all 8 of us in our tracks. Mabel Ruth, come here. Need to talk to you. I wiped my hands, glancing at Mama, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Something cold settled in my stomach as I walked to the front room. Daddy sat in his cushioned chair, the only one in the house reserved for him. He wasn't big, but he filled the room, hands dirt-stained, eyes hard under a furrowed brow. He rolled an unlit cigarette, silent, while I stood, heart racing. Sit down, girl, he said, nodding to the stool at his feet. I perched, hands folded, waiting. You're 14 now, he started, striking a match against his boot sole. Time for you to be a woman. I nodded, thinking this was about my monthly cycles, which Mama had explained in her clipped way. Then he said it, we've arranged a marriage for you. The world stopped. The cicadas outside fell silent, the air in my lungs turned to cement. Marriage? My voice was a whisper. Yes. Your betrothed has settled everything with me. You'll go to his house tomorrow. My eyes darted to Mama in the doorway, her face drawn, eyes on the floorboards. No rescue would come from her. I don't want to get married, Daddy, I said, the words spilling before I could stop them. His hand slammed the chair's arm, making me jump. There isn't any want about it, Mabel Ruth. Women don't choose. They obey. Trembling, I asked, who is he? Daddy exhaled smoke, his eyes narrowing. Your husband-to-be is Mr. Everett Beaumont. The name hit like a stone. Everett Beaumont, 49, a widower with grown sons, owned the cotton gin, the store, half the county's land. He lived in the big white house on the hill, a world away from our dirt-floored life. Daddy, for God's sake, he's old enough to be my grandfather. I stood, shaking. The slap came fast, knocking me back to the stool, a sting blooming across my cheek, copper in my mouth. You'll marry him and be a respectable woman, he said, voice flat. Mr. Beaumont's paid a good dowry. Don't make trouble. In that cramped room, with blood on my tongue, I understood, my life wasn't mine anymore. That night, I lay awake on the pallet, Jessie curled against me. Why are you crying, Mabel? She whispered. I couldn't answer. How do you tell an 8-year-old that tomorrow you'll be given to a stranger, that you'll never climb the oak tree again, never dream of Nashville? I held her close, memorizing her warmth, the smell of her hair, knowing it was the last night of my childhood. Morning came, relentless. Mama dressed me in my Sunday dress, faded blue cotton patched at the elbows, braiding my hair with shaking hands. Be strong, my baby, she whispered, tears in her eyes. It'll be all right. But we both knew she lied. Outside, a black car waited, a rare sight on our dirt road. Mr. Beaumont stepped out, tall in a pressed suit, his salt and pepper hair slicked back. Beautiful girl, he said, appraising me like livestock. You'll give me fine sons. My stomach churned, but Daddy's hand on my shoulder pushed me forward. As the car pulled away, dust billowing, I watched my home, sagging porch, weathered boards, my siblings' faces in the windows, fade in the rear window. Mama stood, arms crossed, holding herself together. I knew I'd never return. The drive was silent, the car jolting over potholes, each bump a reminder of my powerlessness. Mr. Beaumont sat beside me, his presence heavy, his occasional glances chilling my skin. The landscape blurred, cotton fields, pine thickets, the familiar creaks of my childhood, until we reached his estate. The white colonial mansion loomed, columns piercing the sky, surrounded by peach orchards and cotton fields. It was beautiful, a world of wealth I'd never known, but it felt like a tomb. A stern woman, Mrs. Hendricks, the housekeeper, greeted me at the steps. Welcome, Miss Calloway, she said, her voice crisp. I trust your journey was pleasant. Pleasant, as if I'd chosen this. She led me inside, where the air was cool, scented with beeswax and flowers. My feet sank into thick carpet, paintings of stern ancestors glared from dark-paneled walls. I caught my reflection in a mirror, a terrified girl with a bruise on her cheek, a stranger in her own skin. Mrs. Hendricks led me up a grand staircase, her heels clicking on polished wood, to a bedroom larger than our entire shotgun house. A white dress lay on a four-poster bed, delicate as a spiderweb, beside undergarments finer than anything I'd ever touched. Mr. Beaumont wants you presentable, she said, eyeing my patched dress with disdain. The bathroom's through there. Wash thoroughly. I'll return in 30 minutes to help with your hair. When she left, I stood frozen, afraid to touch the gleaming surfaces, the carved bedposts, the velvet curtains, the crystal lamp. The windows stretched nearly to the ceiling, and for one wild moment, I imagined climbing out, running until my legs gave out. But where would I go? Who'd shelter a runaway girl with no money, no skills, and a powerful man like Everett Beaumont hunting her? I was trapped, the room a gilded cage. I bathed mechanically, the hot water foreign after years of creek washing. The mirror showed a girl I barely recognized, thin, wide-eyed, the bruise on her cheek darkening. I slipped into the dress, its silk cool against my skin, but it felt like a costume, not mine. Mrs. Hendricks returned, braiding my hair with brisk efficiency, her fingers tugging painfully. You're fortunate, she said, pinning a veil in place. Many girls would kill for this life. I wanted to scream that this wasn't life, it was a sentence, but my voice stayed locked in my throat. The ceremony was at sunset in the Beaumont family chapel, a stone building at the property's edge. No friends, no family, just a handful of Everett's associates and house staff in neat pews. Daddy sat near the front, in his one good shirt, staring straight ahead, avoiding my gaze. The preacher, a thin man with rheumy eyes, droned about duty and obedience, a woman's role as helpmate and mother. Love was never mentioned. Choice was never mentioned. Do you, Mabel Ruth Calloway, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? His question wasn't a question. My I do was so soft I barely heard it myself. At 14, I became Mrs. Everett Beaumont. A reception followed in the mansion's dining hall, with tiny sandwiches and champagne I was too young to drink. Guests spoke in hushed tones, their voices dipping when I passed. I didn't eat, my stomach was a knot, counting minutes until the crowd would leave, and I'd be alone with him. Daddy shook Everett's hand, nodded once in my direction, and left in a neighbor's truck, $20 richer. The price of his daughter. As darkness fell, Mrs. Hendricks approached, her face unreadable. Mr. Beaumont is waiting in the master bedroom. Top of the stairs, end of the hall. I stood at the staircase's base, legs leaden, the grandfather clock in the foyer ticking away my last moments of freedom. Each step upward felt like wading through molasses, my body heavier with every inch. At the door, I raised my hand to knock, then stopped. This was my room now, wasn't it? Inside, the bedroom was dim, lit by a single lamp. Everett sat in an armchair by the window, smoking a cigar, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up. "Come here, Mabel Ruth," he said, his voice thick with bourbon. I moved woodenly, eyes on the carpet. "You're my wife now. Do you know what that means?" I nodded, though I didn't, not really. Mama had only said it was my duty to obey, to bear children. Whispers from schoolgirls were vague, fragmented. "Good," he said, rising, towering over me. "Then you know what I expect." What followed lives in a shadowed corner of my memory, a place I've spent decades trying to seal shut. Some things can't be forgotten, only endured. Dawn found me curled on the bed's edge, silent tears soaking a pillow softer than any I'd known. My body wasn't mine anymore, not in any way that mattered. I learned quickly what my role was in the Beaumont house: keep Everett content, manage the staff, look presentable for guests. Speak when spoken to, laugh when expected, vanish when business was discussed. I was property, more valuable than the field workers, less important than Everett's prize horses. Days settled into a pattern. I woke before Everett, dressed in outfits Mrs. Hendricks ordered, and took breakfast in the sunroom overlooking gardens I couldn't tend. The staff, 3 maids, a cook, a groundskeeper, Mrs. Hendricks, treated me with distant politeness, never letting me forget I was the boss's wife but not truly the mistress. I was forbidden from menial tasks, my hands, Everett said, must stay soft. I couldn't cook cornbread or beans, the foods of my childhood. The French chef served dishes I couldn't pronounce, arranged like art on china plates worth more than Daddy's yearly income. I wasn't allowed to visit town alone, Mrs. Hendricks escorted me, watching my every move. I couldn't write letters without Everett's approval, couldn't make calls without him listening. My world shrank to the mansion's walls and manicured grounds. I became a ghost in silk, drifting through rooms I couldn't dust, sleeping beside a man who saw me as a possession, dining at a table where I was silent and less asked a question. The loneliness was the worst. I missed Jessie's whispers in the dark, my brother's laughter, even Mama's stern commands. I missed belonging even to a poor, hard life. Here, I was Mabel Ruth no more, only Mrs. Beaumont, a title that felt like a slur in the mouths of those who said it. After 3 months, when my monthly blood didn't come, Mrs. Hendricks nodded knowingly and called the doctor. His examination was cold, humiliating, confirming what I'd feared: I was pregnant. Everett was pleased. This was why he'd married me, to replace his first wife, who'd died in childbirth, to give him sons for his empire. He grew almost gentle, touching my flat stomach, discussing names and schools. He gave me a pearl necklace, fastening it with fingers that lingered like shackles. I was 15, pregnant, and more alone than ever. Autumn brought a shift. Mrs. Jenkins, a maid, approached me on the back porch as I watched leaves skitter across the lawn. "Mrs. Beaumont," she whispered, "someone's asking for you at the kitchen door." My heart leapt. "Who?" "Says his name's Tommy. Says he's your brother." Tommy, my lanky, tree-climbing brother, now 16. "Where is he?" I was already moving. "Mrs. Hendricks sent him away," she said, eyes darting, "but he'll wait by the oak at the property line. Says it's important." I hesitated. Everett was in Birmingham, Mrs. Hendricks was with the butcher. If I was quick. Cover for me, I begged. I'll be back before anyone notices. Mrs. Jenkins nodded, terrified but resolute. Be careful. I slipped out, cutting across the lawn, staying low. The ancient oak stood at the property's edge, its branches spilling over the stone wall. There was Tommy, leaning against the trunk, taller, his face thinning into manhood. Mabel Ruth. We collided in a hug, his arms wrapping me with the affection I'd craved. Tears came, unbidden. What are you doing here? I asked. Is everyone okay? Everybody's fine, he said, scuffing his boot. Jessie cries for you. Mama too, though she hides it. I saved up, took odd jobs, got a bus ticket. Had to know you were all right. His face darkened. People talk, Mabel. Say things about Beaumont, how he treated his first wife. A chill ran through me. What things? He looked away. Bad things. That he's mean when he drinks. That she wasn't just unlucky in childbirth. He couldn't say more, but I understood. I'm fine, I lied, forcing a smile, gesturing at my dress, the pearl necklace. He treats me well. Tommy's eyes, so like mine, saw the truth. You don't have to stay. I've got a plan, a fellow with a car, money for a ticket to Nashville. You could stay with our cousin, find work. Hope flared, bright and dangerous, then dimmed. I touched my stomach. I'm having a baby, Tommy. His eyes widened. All the more reason to go. Mrs. Beaumont. Mrs. Hendricks's voice cut through the air, sharp as a blade. She strode toward us, groundskeepers flanking her. Go, I whispered, pushing Tommy. I'll come back, he promised, scrambling over the wall. As he vanished, I faced Mrs. Hendricks's wrath, but something had shifted inside me. Tommy had planted a seed, possibility, a chance at escape. Mrs. Hendricks's eyes bored into me as we stood beneath the ancient oak, the Alabama dusk heavy with the scent of damp earth and fading summer. Her face was a thundercloud, lips pressed thin. What do you think you're doing, Mrs. Beaumont? She snapped, the title dripping with disdain. The groundskeepers loomed behind her, their presence a silent threat. My heart hammered, but I forced my voice steady. It was my brother, ma'am. I hadn't seen him in months. Her gaze flickered to the wall where Tommy had vanished, then back to me. You know the rules. No visitors without Mr. Beaumont's approval. You've endangered this household's reputation. I wanted to laugh. Reputation? As if my imprisonment were something to protect. Instead, I lowered my eyes, playing the docile wife. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. She escorted me back to the mansion, her hand gripping my arm like a vice. The house loomed larger now, its white columns ghostly in the twilight, a prison masquerading as paradise. Inside, the air was cool, the scent of beeswax and polished wood suffocating. You'll stay in your room until Mr. Beaumont returns, Mrs. Hendricks ordered, her voice clipped. I'll inform him of this, indiscretion. The word landed like a slap, but I nodded, climbing the stairs with a heaviness that wasn't just fear. Tommy's words echoed in my mind, a plan, a car, Nashville. For the first time since that car drove me away from home, I felt a spark of something dangerous, hope. Everett returned from Birmingham 2 days later, his arrival announced by the crunch of gravel and the slam of the car door. I was summoned to his study, a dark-paneled room thick with cigar smoke and the weight of his authority. He sat behind his desk, ledger open, not looking up as I entered. You've disappointed me, Mabel Ruth, he said, his voice low, deliberate. Mrs. Hendricks tells me you had an unauthorized visitor. My hands trembled, clasped tightly before me. It was my brother, sir. He just wanted to see me. He raised his eyes, cold and unyielding. Your family, he said, the word laced with contempt, sold you to me for $20 and a clean slate at my store. You seem to have forgotten, I am your family now. That child you carry is your family. His words cut deeper than Daddy's slap, truth and shame twisted together. I knew Daddy had taken money, but hearing it so baldly, like I was livestock, made my throat close up. "You're forbidden from leaving the house without an escort," Everett continued. "No more walks in the garden, no sitting on the porch. You'll stay inside where I can ensure your safety." Safety, as if his concern were for me, not his ownership. "And if that boy or any of your people come again, I'll have them arrested for trespassing. Do I make myself clear?" I nodded, my voice gone. "Good. Now come here." What followed was a reminder of my place, his hands claiming what the law and his money had bought. I retreated to that quiet corner of my mind, where I hid the pieces of Mabel Ruth he couldn't touch. When it was over, he dismissed me with a wave, as if I were a servant who'd brought his coffee. I returned to our bedroom, the pearl necklace he'd given me glinting on the dresser, a shackle disguised as a gift. I didn't cry. Tears were a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. 2 days later, pain woke me, a dull ache in my lower back that clawed its way to my belly. By midday, I was doubled over on the stairs, clutching the banister. Mrs. Hendricks found me, her face tightening as she saw the blood staining my dress. "Stay here," she ordered, summoning the doctor. By evening, the sheets were crimson, and her pinched expression confirmed what my body already knew: the baby was gone. The doctor came, murmuring about God's will and future pregnancies, his hands cold and impersonal. Everett stood in the doorway, his face unreadable, then turned away without a word. That night, he slept in the guest room, leaving me alone with an emptiness that echoed louder than the mansion's silent halls. Grief is a strange beast. I mourned a child I hadn't wanted, conceived in a violation I couldn't name. Yet that tiny life had been mine, the only thing in this house that belonged to me. Losing it hollowed me out, leaving a void where dreams of motherhood, however forced, had briefly taken root. The mansion grew colder as autumn deepened into winter, not just in temperature but in spirit. Everett withdrew, spending weeks in Birmingham, leaving me to haunt the echoing rooms. When he was home, his mood swung from indifference to possessive rage, leaving bruises where dresses would hide. His drinking worsened, he'd stumble into my room, reeking of whiskey, demanding his rights. Some nights, he'd call me Catherine, his first wife, slurring confessions that chilled my blood. "You were always frigid, Catherine," he'd mutter. "Is that why you lost my son?" In those moments, I pieced together her story: Catherine, from Savannah money, married to merge fortunes, beautiful but distant. She'd lost 2 babies before the final pregnancy took her life. Everett believed she'd done it deliberately, to escape him. His words painted a man not just cruel but unhinged, dangerous in ways that went beyond his fists. If I stayed, I might end up like her, another tragic wife in the Beaumont family plot. Tommy's visit, his talk of escape, took root in that fear, growing into a plan as desperate as it was reckless. Mrs. Jenkins, the maid who'd helped me see Tommy, became my lifeline. She began leaving things in my room: newspapers, magazines, notes on kitchen scraps. Small rebellions that could have cost her job. One evening in February 1963, she slipped me a torn page from Life magazine, an ad circled in pencil: "Help wanted, young women for telephone operators. Training provided. Room and board available. Apply Southern Belle, Nashville, Tennessee." Nashville, where Tommy said our cousin lived. My heart raced. Could I do this? Escape to a city I'd never seen, with no money, no skills? I checked Everett's desk calendar while dusting his study, a task I was allowed to prove my wifely devotion. He'd be in Montgomery for 3 days next week, meeting state officials. 3 days, enough time to reach Nashville if I could get to the bus station 15 miles away. Mrs. Jenkins and I whispered plans in stolen moments. Her brother, Ray, delivered vegetables to the kitchen. He could drive me to Birmingham's Greyhound station. I'd need money. Everett kept cash in his desk, mad money for bribes or whims. I'd never taken a cent, but desperation made a thief of me. The night before his trip, while Everett slept off a drunken stupor, I crept into his study. The drawer wasn't locked. Why would it be? His wife was his prisoner. My hand shook as I took $60, enough for a ticket and a few days' food. Coins slipped, clattering on the hardwood, freezing my blood. But Everett didn't stir. I tucked the bills into my nightgown, their weight burning against my skin. The next morning, I helped him pack, my hand steady despite my pounding heart. He barely looked at me, issuing orders to Mrs. Hendricks about my meals and rest. "You've been too pale, Mabel Ruth," he said, adjusting his hat. "Get some color in your cheeks." His kiss was possessive, not affectionate. As his car pulled away, I didn't wave. I wouldn't miss this cage. Ray was due at midnight with a vegetable delivery, my cover for escape. I packed a small valise, 2 dresses, undergarments, a hairbrush, the pearl necklace to sell in Nashville. I wrote a letter, words I needed to leave behind. "Everett, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Don't look for me. I'm not Catherine, and I won't die in this house." I sealed it, left it on his pillow. The day dragged, each tick of the clock a heartbeat. I watched rain streak the windows, jumping at every sound, certain Everett would return early. Evening came, the cook left at 7, maids at 8. By 9, only Mrs. Hendricks and Mrs. Jenkins remained, my jailer and my accomplice. I feigned a headache, retiring early. In my room, I layered a sweater under my coat, the February chill waiting outside. At 11:45, I crept downstairs, avoiding the creaking third step, the valise light in my trembling hands. Mrs. Jenkins waited in the kitchen, her face tight. "He's here," she whispered. Around back, by the gardener's shed. I hugged her fiercely, this woman who'd risked everything. She pressed sandwiches and a tiny silver cross into my hands. "For protection," she said. I slipped out into the rain-soaked night, the gardeners shed a shadow through the downpour. Ray stood by an old truck, collar up. "Mrs. Beaumont?" "Yes," I gasped. "You're Mrs. Jenkins's brother?" He nodded, tossing my valise into the truck bed. "Get in quick." The vinyl seat was cold, the cab smelling of earth and tobacco. "Keep your head down," Ray said, starting the engine. I slid low, heart pounding as we bumped down the service road, rain masking our escape. Freedom tasted like mud and fear, but it was mine. The truck rumbled through the rain-soaked night, its engine a low growl that drowned out the hammering of my heart. I stayed slumped in the passenger seat, head low, as Ray steered us past the Beaumont estate's rear gate. Every splash through a puddle felt like a gunshot, every shadow a threat that Everett had somehow known, had sent men to drag me back. The service road gave way to the county highway, and only then did I dare sit up, peering through the streaked windshield. The mansion's silhouette faded into the darkness, its white columns ghostly against the storm. For nearly a year, that house had been my prison, its luxury a chain tighter than iron. Now, watching it vanish, I felt something unfurl in my chest, hope, fragile but fierce, like a seedling breaking through hard Alabama clay. "You all right, miss?" Ray asked, glancing over as we merged onto the main road toward Birmingham. His voice was gruff but kind, his hand steady on the wheel. I realized tears were streaming down my face, mingling with raindrops. "Yes," I said, and for the first time in months, I meant it. "I think I might be." He nodded, turning his eyes back to the road, giving me the quiet I needed. The truck smelled of earth, tobacco, and something faintly sweet, freedom, maybe, or just the absence of Everett's bourbon and cigar smoke. I clutched the valise on my lap, the stolen $60 and pearl necklace inside feeling like both a lifeline and a brand of my guilt. The Birmingham Greyhound station was a harsh oasis of fluorescent light in the night, nearly deserted at that hour. A few travelers dozed on benches, their suitcases tucked close, a bored ticket agent yawned behind the counter. Ray parked near the entrance, his truck idling. "You sure you'll be all right?" he asked, eyeing the empty station. "My sister would skin me if anything happened to you." I summoned a smile, though my legs trembled. "I'll be fine. Thank you, for everything." I hesitated, then added, "Tell Mrs. Jenkins she saved my life." He nodded, understanding what words couldn't carry. "Good luck," Mabel Ruth, he said, using my name, not Mrs. Beaumont. It felt like a gift. I bought a one-way ticket to Nashville, departing at 2:15 a.m., the agent barely glancing at me as he slid the paper across. Ray waited until I was settled on a plastic bench, valise clutched to my chest, before driving off into the rain. Alone, I jumped at every sound, the creak of the station door, the shuffle of a janitor's broom, certain Everett's men would storm in, his voice barking my name. But no one came. At 2:15, the bus roared in, a silver beast with Nashville glowing on its sign. I boarded, legs shaking, and took a seat near the middle, pressing my face to the cool window. As the driver pulled away, Birmingham's lights fading, I exhaled fully for the first time in a year. I was 16, alone, with $60 and a stolen necklace. But I was free. The bus hummed through the night, wipers slapping a steady rhythm against the rain. Around me, passengers slept or stared out windows, their faces tired reflections in the glass. No one noticed a young girl traveling alone, a small mercy in a world that often ignored women like me. Somewhere near the Tennessee border, as dawn hinted at the eastern sky, exhaustion overtook me. I dreamed of oak trees and creek beds, Jessie's laughter, a future I might shape. When I woke, the landscape had changed, rolling hills replaced Alabama's flatlands, new trees, new soil. Approaching Nashville, the driver crackled over the intercom. I straightened, smoothing my rumpled dress, my hair a mess from the journey. In minutes, I'd step into a city I'd never seen, with no plan beyond finding Southern Belle and praying they'd hire a girl with no experience. The Nashville terminal was chaos compared to Birmingham's quiet, a swirl of morning commuters, travelers, and vendors. I gripped my valise, overwhelmed by the noise, horns blaring, voices shouting, the clatter of footsteps on tile. For a moment, I considered climbing back on the bus, returning to the devil I knew. Then I pictured Everett's face when he found my letter, his rage at my defiance. No. There was no going back, only forward. I approached an information desk, where a woman with kind eyes and iron-gray hair looked up from her clipboard. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said, my Alabama accent thick in the city's hum, "could you tell me how to find the Southern Belle office? I've come about a job." She studied me, my wrinkled dress, thin frame, the shadows under my eyes, and her expression softened. "Telephone company, huh?" She pulled out a map, circling a spot. 3 blocks that way, big building with blue doors. You can't miss it. She paused, then added, "They don't start interviews till 9, honey. You look like you could use some breakfast first." My stomach growled, the sandwiches Mrs. Jenkins packed long gone. "There's a diner around the corner. Tell Marlene that Betty sent you. She might know about rooms to let if you need a place." I clutched the map like a lifeline. "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it." She smiled, a touch of sadness in her eyes. "Us women have to look out for each other, don't we?" The diner was warm, fragrant with coffee and bacon. I slid onto a counter stool, ordered eggs and toast, and asked for Marlene. A waitress with bright red lipstick and eyes that had seen too much nodded. "That's me, honey. Betty sent you? You need work or a room?" "Both," I admitted. "I'm hoping for a job at Southern Belle, but I need somewhere to stay tonight." She considered me. "Got a cousin runs a boarding house for young ladies. Clean, decent neighborhood, not too expensive. No men past the parlor, strict curfew. That suit you?" It sounded like heaven. "Yes, ma'am, perfect." She scribbled an address. "Tell Helen I sent you. She might let you work in the kitchen to cover some rent till you're on your feet." I ate slowly, savoring the simple food, the diner filling with office workers, truck drivers, shoppers, normal people living normal lives. Maybe I could be one of them. By 8:30, I'd paid my bill, thanked Marlene, and walked the 3 blocks to Southern Belle. The building towered over me, its blue doors gleaming in the morning sun. I paused on the sidewalk, fear clawing at my resolve. Who was I, a runaway with an 8th-grade education, to think I could start over? Then I remembered Tommy's voice in that oak tree, telling me I was smart, that I could be a secretary or a shop girl. He'd believed in me. I squared my shoulders and climbed the steps. Inside, the reception area buzzed, women in crisp uniforms, phones ringing, typewriters clacking. I approached the desk, where a stern woman, Mrs. Eleanor Watson, sat behind a nameplate, Personnel Director. "May I help you?" she asked, not looking up. "Yes, ma'am," I said, willing my voice steady. "I've come about the telephone operator job from Life magazine." She glanced at me, assessing. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, ma'am, I just arrived in Nashville. But I'm a quick learner and I'll work harder than anyone." A faint smile crossed her lips. "Confident, aren't you? Fill out this application. We'll need references, employment history, education." My heart sank as she handed me the form. References? Employment? All I had was a year as Everett's wife and childhood farm work. "I don't have references," I admitted. "I'm 16. I've never had a proper job." Her eyebrows rose. 16? The ad specified 18 and older. "Please," I said, desperation leaking through. "I need this job. I need a fresh start. I'll do anything to prove myself." Something in my eyes must have reached her, her face softened. "What's your name?" "Mabel Ruth Calloway," I said, my birth name strange but right on my tongue. "Well, Miss Calloway, we don't typically hire under 18. She paused, studying me. "But we have a clerical training program for high school graduates." "Are you still in school?" I shook my head. "No, ma'am. I left after 8th grade." She sighed, then straightened her papers. "We occasionally make exceptions for special circumstances. Would those apply to you?" I didn't know what special circumstances meant, but I seized the chance. "Yes, ma'am, they would." She nodded briskly. "Fill out what you can. Leave blank what you can't answer truthfully. I'll interview you at 10 o'clock. Relief flooded me. "Thank you, Mrs. Watson." "Thank you." Sitting in the waiting area, pencil hovering over the form's many blanks, I realized I was choosing my own path for the first time since that morning in Daddy's kitchen. Whatever happened next, it was mine to decide. The waiting area at Southern Belle was a hum of activity, phones ringing, footsteps clicking, the air sharp with typewriter ink and coffee. I sat clutching the application form, its blank spaces glaring like accusations. No references, no work history, no high school diploma, just a 16-year-old runaway with a stolen $60 and a pearl necklace. My hands trembled as I penciled in my name, Mabel Ruth Calloway, each letter a reclamation of the girl I'd been before Everett. The clock above Mrs. Watson's desk ticked toward 10 o'clock, each second stretching my nerves tighter. I smoothed my wrinkled dress, wishing I looked less like I'd slept on a bus, more like the confident women striding through the office in crisp skirts and heels. At 10 o'clock sharp, Mrs. Watson called me into her office, a small room lined with filing cabinets and a window overlooking Nashville's bustling streets. She sat behind her desk, my sparse application before her, her face unreadable. "Miss Calloway," she began, her voice direct, "I'll be frank. Your qualifications on paper are minimal." My stomach dropped, but I nodded, bracing for rejection. "However," she continued, "there's something to be said for determination, and you seem to have that in spades." I met her eyes, hope flickering. "Yes, ma'am. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." She leaned back, fingers steepled. "Are you running from something, Miss Calloway? Or someone?" The question hit like a slap, stripping away my careful composure. I'd prepared answers about diligence and quick learning, not this blunt probe into my truth. For a moment, I considered lying, but her steady gaze demanded honesty. "Yes, ma'am," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I am." She nodded, as if she'd expected it. "I won't pry into details, that's your business. But are you in legal trouble? Is someone likely to come looking for you here?" I swallowed, picturing Everett's rage when he found my letter. Would he hunt me down, his pride wounded by a wife who dared flee? No legal trouble, I said. As for someone looking, possibly. But I have no intention of being found. Mrs. Watson studied me, her sharp eyes softening. Then, to my shock, she smiled, a brief, tight expression, but genuine. 20 years ago, I came to Nashville in circumstances not unlike yours, Miss Calloway. Different details, perhaps, but the same need for a fresh start. I wouldn't be here if someone hadn't taken a chance on me. She straightened a pencil on her desk with precise fingers. So I'm inclined to pay that forward. My breath caught. Does that mean? It means you start Monday morning, she said. Not as an operator, you're too young for that. But we need file clerks in the records department. It's entry-level, but it pays a living wage. We'll provide training. Relief washed through me, warm and overwhelming. Thank you, Mrs. Watson. I won't let you down. See that you don't, she said, her tone brisk but kind. And Mabel Ruth, whatever you're running from, I hope you find what you're looking for here. That evening, I arrived at Helen's boarding house, a 3-story Victorian on a quiet street lined with dogwoods. Helen, a widow in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense air, showed me to a tiny room, barely bigger than a closet, with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking a blooming tree. Rules are simple, she said, setting my valise on the floor. Curfew at 10 o'clock weeknights, midnight Saturdays. No alcohol, no men past the parlor, no cooking in rooms. 3 meals a day included. Miss them, you go hungry. Church on Sundays is encouraged, not mandatory. I run a respectable house, Miss Calloway. Yes, ma'am, I said, already liking her firmness, so different from Mrs. Hendricks's cold control. I understand. She softened, taking in my worn dress and exhausted face. Bathrooms down the hall. Dinner's at 6 o'clock. Rest first, you look like you need it. Alone, I sat on the bed, running my hands over the cotton coverlet. After Everett's mansion of silk and crystal, this plain room felt like wealth, mine, not owned by someone else. I could breathe here, no tiptoeing around priceless rugs or fearing a wrong move would bring punishment. At dinner, I joined 12 other boarders, young women working as secretaries, shop girls, or nurses in training. The meal was hearty: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, served family style at a long table. The girls were curious, friendly. Where you from? Asked Betty Sue, a blonde with a department store job. Alabama, I said, keeping it vague. Small town. I'm from Knoxville, she offered, passing the bread. Came here after my fiancé ran off with my cousin. Needed a fresh start. The others nodded, sharing their own stories, broken engagements, family pressures, dreams their hometowns couldn't hold. None mentioned child brides or abusive husbands, but each had fled something. I wasn't so alone. My first week at Southern Belle was a whirlwind. The records department, a vast basement room of filing cabinets, held customer accounts, service logs, and billing records. My job was simple but critical: file papers correctly, retrieve records on request, update information accurately. A misplaced file could disrupt service or billing, so I focused fiercely, finding pride in precision. I was the youngest clerk, surrounded by women in their 20s and 30s, many supporting families. They welcomed me, sharing lunches, teaching me the system, offering advice on bus routes and affordable shops. My first paycheck, $42 for a week's work, was a revelation. After paying Helen, I bought a new dress, sensible shoes, and a bottle of rosewater perfume, my first purchase just for me. It felt like a declaration: I was building a life. Spring bloomed into summer, Nashville's streets alive with color and sound. I settled into routines: work weekdays, laundry, and shopping Saturdays, sometimes a movie with boarders if we pooled our pennies. Sundays, I explored downtown, marveling at how the city became familiar, its bustle a stark contrast to the mansion's stifling quiet. In July, Mrs. Watson called me to her office. My stomach nodded. Had I erred? Miss Calloway, she said, your supervisors praise your work. You're punctual, accurate, and have improved our filing system. I blushed, surprised. There's an opening in the typing pool, better pay, more responsibility. Interested? Yes, ma'am, I said instantly, then hesitated. But I don't know how to type. She smiled, rare and warm. We offer training, 2 nights a week for 6 weeks. If you commit, the position's yours. I nearly wept. I'll work harder than anyone, Mrs. Watson. For 6 weeks, I stayed late Tuesdays and Thursdays, practicing key strikes until my fingers cramped. At night, I traced keyboard layouts on my bedsheet, memorizing letters. By August, I typed 40 words per minute with few errors, enough to join the typing pool. The second-floor room clattered with typewriters, my new role typing memos, correspondence, and reports. Each perfect letter was a triumph, proof I was more than Everett's possession. There, I met Sarah Jenkins, no relation to Mrs. Jenkins, who became a friend. At 22, college-educated, she was confident, her dark hair sleek, her eyes sharp. Over lunch, she urged me to take night classes. With your brains, you could get a business degree, maybe be a supervisor. College seemed impossible, I hadn't finished high school, but her words planted a seed, as Tommy's had. One evening, as summer faded, I lay in my narrow bed, Sarah's suggestion swirling. Could I do it? Was I smart enough? I thought of 14-year-old Mabel Ruth in that oak tree, dreaming of escape. I owed her this chance. The next day, I asked Mrs. Watson about education programs. To my surprise, she confirmed Southern Belle offered tuition assistance and helped me apply. I thought you'd ask eventually, she said, her pen swift across the forms. You've got potential, Miss Calloway, too much for the typing pool. By September 1963, I was enrolled in GED prep classes at the YWCA, 3 nights a week. After long days at work, I studied algebra, history, science, literature, exhaustion battling determination. My classmates, women like me, dropouts from poverty or early marriage, became a sisterhood, cheering each small victory. Our teachers shared Eleanor Roosevelt's words, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." I wrote it in my notebook, a shield against Everett's voice, still whispering I was worthless. Slowly, I was proving him wrong. The YWCA classroom smelled of chalk dust and old books, a comforting contrast to the sterile polish of Everett's mansion. 3 nights a week, after a full day in Southern Belle's typing pool, I sat at a worn desk, pencil in hand, wrestling with algebra equations and history dates. My classmates, women in their 20s and 30s, faces lined with the weight of early marriages, poverty, or family demands, shared my hunger for a second chance. We propped each other up, swapping notes, whispering encouragement during breaks. You got this, Mabel, said Clara, a single mother studying for her GED to become a nurse. Her faith in me, in all of us, felt like a lifeline. Our teacher, Mrs. Phillips, wrote Eleanor Roosevelt's words on the blackboard, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." I copied them daily, a mantra against the echoes of Everett's voice calling me nothing. Nashville's autumn of 1963 was crisp, the city's streets golden with falling leaves. I'd been free for 7 months, and the nightmares, Everett's hands, the mansion's locked doors, came less often. I no longer flinched at every man's voice or scanned crowds for his face. My life was taking shape, a job I was good at, a room at Helen's boarding house, friends who knew me as Mabel Ruth, not Mrs. Beaumont. Yet fear lingered, a shadow at the edge of my days. What if Everett found me? Would he let me go, or would his pride demand he reclaim his property? I pushed the thoughts down, focusing on work, study, the rhythm of a life I was building, brick by brick. In the typing pool, I found a rhythm too. The clatter of keys was a kind of music, each letter I typed, memos, reports, customer letters, a small act of creation. Sarah Jenkins, my friend with the college degree and sharp wit, became my anchor. Over lunch, sharing sandwiches in the break room, she'd talk about her dreams of management, her belief that women could do more than answer phones or type letters. You should aim higher, Mabel, she said one October afternoon, her dark eyes serious. Get your GED, then college. Southern Bell's changing, they're starting to promote women. You could be a supervisor one day. I laughed, the idea absurd. Me? I didn't finish 8th grade, Sarah. She waved it off. Doesn't matter. You're smarter than half the men in this building. Get that diploma, and I'll help you with the rest. Her words stayed with me, mingling with Mrs. Watson's encouragement and the memory of Tommy's faith in that oak tree. I owed it to the girl I'd been, the one who'd dreamed of Nashville from a branch, to try. My GED classes were grueling. Some nights, I could barely keep my eyes open, my fingers cramped from typing all day, but I persisted. Algebra was a puzzle I learned to love, its logic a balm after years of chaos. Literature opened worlds, Jane Eyre's defiance, Scout Finch's courage, reminding me I wasn't alone in fighting for my place. By November, I was passing practice tests, my confidence growing like the city's skyline. Life at the boarding house was a comfort, too. Helen's strict rules, curfew, no men, church encouraged, felt like guardrails, not chains. The other girls were my first real friends since Alabama. Betty Sue, the department store clerk, taught me to curl my hair. Margaret, a nurse in training, shared her medical textbooks, sparking my curiosity. Sunday dinners were loud, laughter-filled affairs, the table groaning with fried chicken and peach cobbler. I'd sit among them, marveling at how I'd gone from a ghost in Everett's mansion to a woman with a place, a voice. Yet I guarded my past, sharing only that I was from Alabama, that I'd left a hard life. They didn't press, sensing the weight behind my silences. Then, 3 days before Christmas, everything shifted. I returned to the boarding house after work, my coat dusted with early snow, to find Helen in the front hall, an envelope in her hand. "This came for you," she said, her voice tight. "The return address is Alabama." My blood froze. For a moment, I couldn't move, the air thick with the scent of pine from the parlor's Christmas tree. Was it Everett? A threat, a summons? With trembling fingers, I took the envelope. The handwriting wasn't his, small, neat, feminine. The return address wasn't the Beaumont estate but a town I didn't know. I carried it to my room, closing the door before slitting it open. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, covered in careful script. "Dear Mabel Ruth," it began, "I pray this letter finds you safe. It's your sister Jessie writing." Tears blurred my vision before I read another word. Jessie, my little sister, only 8 when I'd left, her warmth the last thing I'd clung to that final night at home. "Tommy gave me this address," she continued. "He says you're in Nashville, doing well. Mama wanted you to know Daddy passed last month. His heart gave out in the fields. The funeral was small. We wished you could have been there, but we understand why you couldn't. Grief hit, complicated and raw. Daddy, who'd sold me for $20, was gone. I should have felt relief, but instead, I mourned the father he might have been, the apology I'd never hear." I wiped my eyes, reading on. "There's more news. After the funeral, a man came, Mr. Beaumont's lawyer. He said your marriage was dissolved on grounds of abandonment. You're not his wife anymore, Mabel Ruth. You're free." The word stopped my breath. Free. Legally, officially, no longer Mrs. Beaumont. Had Everett truly let me go? It didn't fit his possessive nature, but maybe his pride couldn't bear the shame of a runaway wife. Whatever his reasons, I was Mabel Ruth Calloway again, no one's property. Jessie's letter ended with love, Tommy's working at a garage, sending money home. The little ones miss you. Mama cries at night, I think with regrets. Write back so we know you're safe. Maybe someday we'll see each other. Your loving sister, Jessie. I read it 3 times, emotions churning, relief, grief, a fierce joy. That night, I wrote 2 letters. To Jessie, I shared that I was safe, working at Southern Bell, taking classes, building a life. I kept details vague, shielding her from the truth of my year with Everett, but I poured out my hope, my happiness. To Tommy, I told everything: Mrs. Jenkins's help, Ray's truck, the midnight escape, the kindness of strangers like Betty and Marlene. I thanked him for planting the seed of escape, for believing in me when I couldn't. I invited him to visit, hinting Nashville had jobs for mechanics. The next morning, I mailed them, the act a bridge to my past, not to return but to reclaim what was worth keeping: my siblings, my memories, the girl I'd been. Christmas at the boarding house was warm, the parlor decked with tinsel and a tree we'd all decorated. I joined the girls in singing carols, my voice stronger than it had been in years. The letter had unshackled something in me. I felt lighter, as if the mansion's weight had finally lifted. I still carried scars, nights when a slammed door made me jump, moments when a man's cologne sent me back to that bedroom, but they were fading. Healing wasn't a straight path, but each step forward, each typed letter, each algebra problem solved, each laugh shared with Sarah or Betty Sue, was a victory. In January 1964, I returned to my GED classes with renewed fire. The world was shifting around me: news of civil rights marches, women demanding equal pay, a war in Vietnam taking boys I'd known. I watched, understanding freedom's cost, its worth, in a way few could. Sarah pushed me harder, bringing college catalogs to lunch, circling business programs. "You're not just surviving, Mabel," she said. "You're thriving. Don't stop now." Mrs. Watson echoed her, checking my progress, her rare smiles a quiet pride. By spring, I was ready for the GED exam, my heart pounding as I filled in answers, each one a defiance of the life Everett had planned for me. The test results came in June, a pass, with scores high enough to qualify for college courses. I celebrated with my YWCA classmates at a diner, our laughter louder than the jukebox. That night, lying in my tiny room, I traced the silver cross Mrs. Jenkins had given me, now worn daily. Faith had carried me, not just in God, but in myself, in the kindness of strangers, in the possibility of a future I could choose. I was 16, no longer a child bride, no longer a ghost. I was Mabel Ruth Calloway, and I was just beginning. The summer of 1964 was a blaze of possibility, Nashville's streets alive with the hum of change, music spilling from honky-tonks, civil rights marchers chanting downtown, young women like me daring to dream beyond the roles we'd been assigned. Passing my GED in June felt like shedding a skin, the weight of my interrupted education falling away. I was 16, no longer defined by Everett's mansion or Daddy's betrayal, but by my own choices: the job at Southern Belle, the friendships at Helen's boarding house, the silver cross I wore as a reminder of Mrs. Jenkins's courage. That summer, I enrolled in night classes at the community college, studying business administration with Southern Belle's tuition assistance. Each step forward was a promise kept to the girl who'd climbed that Alabama oak tree, dreaming of a bigger world. My days settled into a rhythm of purpose. By day, I worked in the typing pool, my fingers flying over keys, producing flawless memos and reports. The clatter of typewriters was my anthem, each document a testament to my growing skill. Sarah Jenkins, ever my cheerleader, pushed me to aim higher. "You're wasting your brain on typing, Mabel," she said one humid August afternoon, fanning herself with a company newsletter. "With your GED, you can take on bigger roles, maybe even management." I laughed, still seeing myself as the runaway with no credentials. "Management? Sarah, I'm just happy to have a paycheck." She fixed me with a look. "Don't sell yourself short. The world's changing, women are breaking through. You could be one of them." Her words echoed Mrs. Watson's quiet confidence in me, and I began to believe them. At night, I'd ride the bus to the college, my textbooks heavy in my arms, and sit in classrooms filled with other non-traditional students, veterans, single mothers, factory workers chasing degrees. Business courses fascinated me: accounting's precision, management's strategy, the idea that I could learn to lead, not just follow. Some nights, exhaustion made the words blur, but I'd think of Jesse's letter, "You're free," and keep going. Freedom wasn't just escaping Everett, it was building something he could never touch. Life at the boarding house remained my anchor. Helen's rules gave structure, her Sunday dinners a family I'd chosen. Betty Sue and Margaret became sisters of sorts, sharing stories of boyfriends, work dramas, and dreams. I opened up more, telling them about my GED, my college plans, though I still guarded the truth of my marriage. They sensed the gaps in my story but didn't pry, their acceptance a balm. One Saturday, we pooled our money for a matinee, giggling through a Doris Day film, the theater's cool darkness a rare treat. For those hours, I was just Mabel, a young woman with friends, not a survivor carrying scars. In spring 1965, Tommy visited, stepping off a Greyhound bus looking taller, his mechanic's hand stained with grease. He stayed at a men's boarding house nearby, and we spent a weekend wandering Nashville, park benches, diner coffee, the Cumberland River glinting under April sun. "You look happy, Mabel Ruth," he said as we sat watching children play. "Real happy, not pretending." I smiled, realizing it was true. "I am. I built this, Tommy. Nobody can take it away." He squeezed my hand, his chip-toothed grin unchanged. We didn't dwell on the past, Daddy's death, Mama's regrets, but built something new, a sibling bond rooted in who we were now. He told me about his garage job, his plans to save for a car. I invited him to move to Nashville, but he shook his head. "Alabama's home for now. But I'll visit again." Work at Southern Bell grew more demanding as I took on extra tasks, eager to prove myself. By 1966, I'd moved from the typing pool to administrative assistant, handling schedules, correspondence, and reports for the records department. The promotion came with a raise, enough to save a little after paying Helen and tuition. I bought a second-hand typewriter, practicing at night to boost my speed, and a navy dress that made me feel professional, not like a girl playing dress-up. Mrs. Watson noticed, calling me to her office one day. "You're exceeding expectations, Miss Calloway," she said, her rare smile warm. "Keep this up, and you'll go far." Her faith, like Sarah's and Tommy's, fueled me, a reminder I was more than my past. The world beyond Nashville was turbulent, Vietnam War protests, civil rights battles, women's voices rising for equality. I followed the news, clipping articles about activists like Fannie Lou Hamer, whose courage in the face of violence mirrored my own quiet fight. I understood what it meant to reclaim your voice, to demand a place in a world that tried to silence you. At college, I wrote essays about workplace equity, drawing on my experiences without revealing too much. My professors praised my insight, urging me to keep writing, to share my perspective. It was heady, this idea that my thoughts mattered, that I could shape ideas as well as type them. In 1967, I took a leap, moving from Helen's to a one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore in a neighborhood near the college. It was small, the walls thin, but I painted them yellow, hung curtains I'd sewn, and furnished it with thrift store finds, a wobbly table, a lumpy sofa, a lamp with a cracked shade. Each piece was a choice, a small freedom. I'd sit by the window, watching students pass, and feel a pride I'd never known in Everett's mansion. This was mine, earned with my own hands. Jessie wrote occasionally, her letters full of news, Tommy's new job, the younger sibling's school triumphs. Mama never wrote, but Jessie said she kept my letters in a tin box, reading them when she thought no one saw. I sent short replies, careful not to promise a visit. Alabama held too many ghosts. By 1968, I was a junior supervisor at Southern Bell, overseeing a small team in the records department. The role was daunting, managing schedules, resolving disputes, ensuring accuracy, but I thrived on it. My team, mostly women, respected my fairness, my willingness to pitch in. Ascended to the next level. I was still in college, balancing work and night classes, my associate's degree in sight. Sarah, now a department lead, mentored me, sharing tips on leadership, while Mrs. Watson became a quiet champion, recommending me for projects that raised my profile. I dated sparingly, cautious after Everett, my instincts sharp for men who saw women as possessions. A few were kind, but none felt right, and I was content building my life alone. In 1969, I graduated with my associate's degree, Tommy and Jessie traveling from Alabama for the ceremony. Mrs. Watson sat beside them, beaming like a proud mother. We celebrated at a diner, toasting with milkshakes, my siblings marveling at the woman I'd become. "You did it, Mabel Ruth," Tommy said, his eyes shining. "Knew you would." Jessie, now a teenager, hugged me tight, whispering, "I want to be like you." I cried then, not for the past, but for the future we'd all fought for. That night, I looked at my diploma, framed above my desk, and saw not just a degree but a life reclaimed, proof that even the deepest wounds could heal into strength. Graduating with my associate's degree in 1969 was like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. At 21, I stood on the community college stage, my navy dress crisp, my smile wide as Tommy, Jessie, and Mrs. Watson cheered from the audience. The diploma in my hands wasn't just paper, it was proof I'd rebuilt myself from the ashes of Everett's mansion. Nashville had become my home, its rhythm of honky-tonks, church bells, and bustling streets a heartbeat I'd learned to love. I was a junior supervisor at Southern Bell, living in my yellow-walled apartment, studying for a bachelor's degree in evening classes. Each day felt like a gift, a choice I'd made, not a sentence imposed. Yet the scars remained, moments when a man's raised voice or the clink of ice in a glass sent me back to that Alabama bedroom. Healing was a winding path, but I walked it, step by deliberate step. My role at Southern Bell grew more demanding, but I thrived on the challenge. Supervising a team of clerks meant balancing schedules, resolving conflicts, and ensuring our records were flawless. I was firm but fair, earning respect from women who, like me, knew the way to proving themselves in a man's world. Sarah Jenkins, now a department lead, mentored me over coffee breaks, sharing strategies for navigating office politics. "You've got a knack for this, Mabel," she said one crisp fall morning in 1970, her eyes gleaming. "Keep learning, and you'll be running this place someday." I laughed, but her faith, like Mrs. Watson's, fueled my ambition. I enrolled in advanced business courses, diving into organizational theory and finance, ideas that made the world feel bigger, more conquerable. Life outside work was rich, too. My apartment above the bookstore was a sanctuary, its shelves filled with novels and textbooks, its windows open to the hum of students and street musicians. I'd spend Sundays gardening, coaxing tomatoes and roses from a small plot behind the building, or hosting potlucks with boarding house friends. Betty Sue, now engaged, teased me about my single status. "You're too picky, Mabel. Plenty of good men out there." I'd smile, deflecting. After Everett, I trusted my instincts, wary of men who saw women as trophies. I dated occasionally, kind men, teachers or clerks, but none sparked more than friendship. I was content, my life full without a husband's shadow. The world kept shifting, its turbulence mirrored in headlines I read over morning coffee. The Vietnam War dragged on, claiming lives of boys I'd known, women's liberation rallies demanded equal pay, equal rights. I attended a few, standing at the edges, moved by speakers who echoed my own fight for autonomy. At college, I wrote papers on workplace equity, weaving in my experiences without bearing my past. My professors urged me to publish, but I hesitated, not ready to share my story beyond the safety of Nashville's small circles. Jessie's letters kept me tethered to Alabama, news of her high school triumphs, Tommy's new car, Mama's quiet pride in my achievements. I wrote back, sending photos of my apartment, my garden, but I didn't visit. The past was a door I kept closed, though I missed my siblings' laughter. In 1972, everything changed again. At a neighborhood potluck, a friend introduced me to Richard Hampton, a math teacher with a gentle smile and hands calloused from playing guitar at local coffee houses. He was 27, quiet, with warm brown eyes that seemed to see me, not just my face. We bonded over Johnny Cash records and Blackberry Cobbler, talking until the fireflies came out. Our courtship was slow, deliberate. I was 24, established at Southern Bell, nearing my bachelor's degree, and cautious. Richard respected my pace, never pushing, his steadiness a contrast to Everett's volatility. On our fifth date, parked outside my apartment after a movie, he leaned to kiss me goodnight. I flinched, a reflex from memories I'd thought buried. He pulled back, concern etching his face. "I'm sorry," I said, cheeks burning, angry at myself. It's not you. He studied me, not with pity but understanding. Someone hurt you, he said, a statement, not a question. I nodded, throat tight. Take all the time you need, Mabel Ruth, he said, his voice soft but firm. I'm not going anywhere. His patience cracked something open in me, a trust one hadn't felt since Tommy's hug under that oak tree. 6 months later, I told him everything, the arranged marriage at 14, the year in Everett's mansion, the midnight escape. I'd only shared the full story with Mrs. Watson, and speaking it to Richard was like lancing a wound, painful but cleansing. When I finished, he took my hands. Thank you for trusting me, he said. This explains your strength, your independence, your determination. I admire you even more now. His words weren't pity, they were respect, seeing me as whole, not broken. We grew closer, sharing quiet evenings, him strumming guitar, me reading beside him, building a partnership rooted in choice, not obligation. In 1973, he proposed, not with a grand gesture but a simple question over coffee in my kitchen, Mabel Ruth, will you build a life with me? I said yes, not because I needed him, but because I wanted him, a distinction Everett had never allowed. We married in summer 1974, in a park under oak trees, a small ceremony with Tommy giving me away and Jessie as maid of honor. I wore a cream dress I'd chosen, carried wildflowers picked that morning, and spoke vows I'd written. Richard's family from Virginia mingled with my siblings, Mrs. Watson beaming in the front row. My idea was a promise freely given, a partnership with a man who valued my mind and spirit as much as my heart. The reception was laughter-filled, with dancing under string lights, my heart full in a way I'd never known in Alabama. After the wedding, I continued at Southern Bell, now a department supervisor, managing a team across multiple offices. My bachelor's degree, earned in 1975, hung beside my associates, a testament to years of night classes and grit. Richard taught high school, his evenings filled with lesson plans and gigs, his support unwavering as I climbed the corporate ladder. We bought a small house in Nashville's suburbs, with a garden for my roses and a porch where we'd sit, his guitar filling the twilight. It wasn't the life I'd dreamed of at 14, it was better, built on my terms, not chance or someone else's will. In 1976, our daughter, Sarah Eleanor, was born, named for my friend and Mrs. Watson, who'd given me my start. Holding her, I marveled at her future, so different from mine. She'd never know hunger, fear, or the weight of being sold. I vowed to raise her believing in her worth, her right to choose her path. As she grew, I taught her to speak up, to trust her instincts, to value her mind over her appearance. Richard and I showed her a marriage of equals, a home where love wasn't a transaction. Watching her toddle through our garden, chasing fireflies, I saw the girl I'd been, and the woman I'd become, a survivor, yes, but also a creator of something beautiful. By 1980, my life in Nashville was a tapestry of hard-won victories, woven with threads of love, work, and purpose. At 32, I was a senior supervisor at Southern Bell, overseeing operations across 3 departments, my office lined with books and awards for efficiency and leadership. My bachelor's degree, earned through years of night classes, was a stepping stone to an MBA program I'd started part-time, my ambition undimmed by motherhood or the weight of my past. Our suburban home buzzed with life, Sarah Eleanor, now 4, filled it with laughter, her crayons and toys scattered across the oak floors Richard and I had sanded ourselves. Our garden bloomed with roses and vegetables, a symbol of roots I'd planted deep in Tennessee soil. Yet the scars from Alabama lingered, faint but present, like lines in a well-read book. I'd learned to live with them, to let them remind me of my strength. Richard remained my anchor, his quiet steadiness a contrast to the chaos I'd escaped. He'd moved from teaching to school administration, his evenings still filled with guitar melodies that soothed Sarah to sleep. Our marriage was a partnership, built on mutual respect, dishes shared, decisions debated, dreams supported. When I doubted myself, juggling work, school, and motherhood, he'd say, "Mabel Ruth, you've climbed mountains. This is just a hill." His faith, like Sarah Jenkins's and Mrs. Watson's, was a light I followed. We'd talk late into the night on our porch, planning for Sarah's future, our own, the world we wanted to shape for her, a world where no girl would be sold or silenced. Work at Southern Belle was both demanding and fulfilling. I led with empathy, remembering the women who'd lifted me, Mrs. Jenkins, Mrs. Watson, Sarah. My team respected my ability to listen, to solve problems without ego. In 1981, I was promoted to regional manager, a role that put me in boardrooms with men who often underestimated me. I'd walk in, my navy suits tailored, my notes precise, and prove them wrong with data and strategy. Some bristled, but others learned to value my insight. The company was evolving, more women in leadership, policies shifting toward equity, and I was part of that change, mentoring younger women, like I'd been mentored, to see their potential. Sarah Eleanor was my joy, her curiosity a mirror of the girl I'd been, climbing oak trees with dreams too big for Alabama. At 5, she'd ask endless questions, why the sky was blue, how phones worked, what my job was like. I answered patiently, fostering her confidence, determined she'd never know the fear I'd carried at her age. We'd garden together, her small hands planting seeds, or read books in the evenings, her head on my shoulder. Richard taught her guitar chords, her giggles filling the house when she strummed off key. I watched her grow, free in a way I hadn't been, and felt a fierce pride, not just in her, but in the life I'd built to give her that freedom. My connection to Alabama stayed alive through Jessie and Tommy. Jessie, now 20, was studying nursing in Birmingham, her letters full of ambition and humor. Tommy, married with a son, ran his own garage, his visits to Nashville a highlight for Sarah, who called him Uncle T. Mama remained a distant figure. Jessie said she spoke of me with regret but never wrote. I sent her a photo of Sarah once, hoping it might bridge the gap, but no reply came. I accepted it, focusing on the family I had, here, now, chosen. In 1983, a letter arrived that stirred the past like dust in a forgotten room. It was from Mrs. Jenkins, the maid who'd risked everything to help me escape Everett's mansion. Now retired, she'd moved to Atlanta, tracking me down through Tommy. I heard you're doing well, Mrs. Beaumont. No, Miss Calloway, she wrote, her humor warm even on paper. I always knew you'd make it. I'm proud to have played a small part. She included a new silver cross, simpler than the one she'd given me, engraved with strength. Tears fell as I read, gratitude overwhelming me. I wrote back, inviting her to visit, thanking her for the courage that had changed my life. When she came that summer, we sat in my garden, Sarah playing nearby, and talked like old friends. You didn't just survive, Mabel Ruth, she said, her eyes crinkling. You thrived. That same year, I faced a choice that tested my resolve. Southern Belle offered me a directorship in Atlanta, a major leap, higher pay, more influence, a chance to shape company policy. But it meant leaving Nashville, our home, Richard's job, Sarah's school. We debated for weeks, weighing pros and cons on our porch. Richard was supportive, willing to relocate, but I saw the cost in his eyes, his community, his music gigs, the life we'd built. Sarah, now 7, loved her friends, her garden. I loved Nashville, its rhythm my heartbeat. Yet the role was a chance to break more ceilings, to show women like me, survivors, dreamers, could reach the top. I flew to Atlanta for the interview, my first time on a plane, the world below a patchwork of possibility. The executives were impressed, offering the job on the spot. I returned home, torn, and sat with Richard in our kitchen, Sarah asleep upstairs. What do you want, Mabel Ruth? He asked, his hand over mine. I thought of the girl I'd been at 14, sold to Everett, dreaming of escape. She'd wanted freedom, yes, but also a life of meaning, of roots. Atlanta was a summit, but Nashville was home. I want to stay, I said, certainty settling in. I can make a difference here, with you and Sarah, without losing what we've built. He smiled, relief in his eyes. Then we stay. I declined the directorship, recommending Sarah Jenkins, who took the role and soared. Instead, I accepted a new position in Nashville, divisional director, overseeing regional operations, a promotion that kept me home but stretched my skills. I threw myself into it, streamlining processes, mentoring staff, advocating for women's advancement. By 1985, I was a recognized leader, invited to speak at industry conferences, my story carefully edited to focus on grit and education, not the marriage I'd fled. Audiences applauded, unaware of the 14-year-old girl behind my polished words, but I carried her with me, honoring her courage. Sarah grew into a fierce, kind girl, excelling at school, playing soccer, strumming guitar like her father. At 9, she asked about my childhood, her questions sharper than before. I shared pieces, growing up poor, working the fields, loving my siblings, but kept Everett locked away. One day, she'd hear the full story, when she was old enough to understand its weight. For now, I taught her resilience, independence, the power of her voice. Richard and I dreamed of a second child, but after 2 miscarriages, we focused on Sarah, grateful for the family we had. As the 1980s unfolded, I reflected on my journey. I'd gone from a child bride to a leader, from a runaway with $60 to a woman with a home, a career, a family. The scars from Everett's mansion, emotional, not physical, never fully vanished, but they've become part of my strength, like knots in a tree that make it stand taller. I'd found redemption, not in erasing the past, but in building a life that outshone it. On quiet nights, watching Sarah sleep or holding Richard's hand on our porch, I knew I'd done more than survive. I'd created something enduring, a legacy of love and choice for the generations to come. The late 1980s brought a season of reflection and new beginnings. At 40 in 1988, I was a divisional director at Southern Bell, my days filled with strategic meetings, mentorship, and pushing for policies that empowered women in the workplace. My MBA, completed in 1986, hung beside my other degrees, a testament to nights spent studying while Sarah did homework nearby. Our Nashville home was a haven. Sarah Eleanor, now 12, filled it with soccer trophies, guitar strums, and questions that kept Richard and me on our toes. Richard, a high school principal, balanced his career with evening gigs, his music a thread weaving our family closer. My past, Everett's mansion, the child bride I'd been, felt like a distant storm, its thunder faint but never silent. I'd built a life that honored the 14-year-old Mabel Ruth, but I knew her story wasn't fully told, not even to those I loved most. Sarah's curiosity about my past grew sharper as she entered her teens. One evening in 1989, as we washed dishes, she asked, "Mom, why don't we visit Alabama like Uncle Tommy does? What was it really like growing up there?" Her brown eyes, so like Richard's, held a mix of innocence and persistence. I dried my hands, choosing my words. "It was hard, Sarah. We were poor, worked the fields, didn't have much. I left young to find a better life here." She frowned, sensing the gaps. "But why don't you talk about it? Grandma, your mom, she's still alive, right? Don't you miss her?" The question stung, unearthing Mama's silence, the tin box of letters Jessie said she kept. "I miss parts of it," I admitted. "My siblings, the land. But some things are better left behind." She nodded, not satisfied but letting it go. I knew I'd have to tell her the full truth soon, about Everett, the marriage, the escape, before she was old enough to stumble into it herself. Work remained my proving ground. Southern Bell was navigating deregulation, technological shifts, and I was at the forefront, leading teams to adapt. I mentored women like I'd been mentored, helping them climb from clerical roles to management. Sarah Jenkins, now a vice president in Atlanta, visited often, our lunches a chance to strategize and laugh. "You're a trailblazer, Mabel," she said one spring day, her pride evident. "You've changed this company." I shook my head, deflecting. "I just did what you and Mrs. Watson taught me, kept going." But her words lingered, a reminder of how far I'd come from the girl with no references, begging for a chance. In 1990, an unexpected letter arrived from Jessie, now a nurse practitioner in Birmingham. "Mabel Ruth," she wrote, "Mama's sick, lung cancer, from years of smoking and field dust. She's asking for you. I know it's complicated, but she wants to see you before it's too late." My heart clenched. Mama, who'd stood silent as Daddy sold me, who'd never written, was reaching out now. Part of me wanted to refuse, to let the past stay buried. But another part, the girl who'd loved her sharp voice and rare soft moments, needed closure. Richard, ever steady, held me as I wrestled with it. "You don't owe her anything," he said. "But if you go, it's for you, not her. To make peace." Sarah, overhearing, added, "I want to meet her, Mom. She's my grandma." Her words tipped the scale. I couldn't deny her a piece of my history, even its painful parts. We planned a trip for summer 1990, my first return to Alabama in 27 years. I took leave from work, nerves jangling as we packed. Richard drove, Sarah chattering in the back seat, oblivious to the weight I carried. The landscape shifted as we crossed the state line, rolling hills flattening, red clay fields stretching wide, oak trees stirring memories of my childhood perch. My stomach knotted as we neared the town, its crossroads unchanged, the general store, now weathered, the Baptist church, paint peeling, the dirt road to our old shotgun house. The Beaumont mansion loomed in my mind, but I avoided its hill, unwilling to see if it still stood. Mama's house, where Jessie lived with her, was a modest ranch, a far cry from our childhood home. Jessie met us at the door, her hair streaked with gray, her hug fierce. "You made it," she whispered, tears in her eyes. Sarah ran to Tommy, who'd driven up, his son now a lanky teen. Mama sat in a recliner, frail, an oxygen tube in her nose, her eyes, so like mine, searching my face. "Mabel Ruth," she rasped, voice weak but urgent. "You came." I nodded, unsure what to feel, anger, pity, love. Sarah, sensing the tension, stayed close to Richard, who squeezed my hand. We sat, the air thick with unspoken history. Mama spoke first, haltingly. "I failed you, Mabel. Let your daddy do what he did." I was scared, weak. "I've regretted it every day." Her eyes brimmed, and I saw the tin box on a side table, my letters inside. "I read your letters," she said. "You built a life, a good one. I'm proud, even if I got no right to be." The words cracked something in me, not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. She'd been trapped too, by poverty, by a man who ruled her as Everett had tried to rule me. "I'm here, Mama," I said, my voice steady. "That's enough for now." Sarah, quiet until then, approached, showing Mama a drawing she'd made, a garden, like ours. "That's beautiful, child," Mama said, her smile genuine. For Sarah's sake, I stayed civil, letting her know her grandmother without the weight of our past. We stayed a week, visiting Tommy's family, walking the creek where I'd washed clothes as a girl. The Beaumont mansion, Jessie told me, had been sold after Everett's death in 1975, its grandeur faded. I didn't visit it, its ghosts didn't need stirring. Instead, I showed Sarah the oak tree I'd climbed, its branches still strong. "This is where I dreamed of Nashville," I told her. She grinned, scrambling up, fearless. Back at Mama's, I shared more of my story, not the marriage, but the poverty, the hunger for education. Mama listened, her regret palpable. On our last day, she pressed a quilt into my hands, one she'd made in better health. "For you," she said. "I hope it keeps you warm." I took it, a gesture toward healing, not absolution. Mama died 3 months later, Jessie calling with the news. I mourned, not for the mother I'd lost, but for the one we might have had. I sent money for the funeral, but didn't attend, choosing to remember her through the quilt, now draped over my couch. Sarah asked questions, and I began telling her pieces of the truth, about leaving home young, about building a life from nothing. The full story, I decided, would come when she was 16, old enough to understand its weight without carrying it. Back in Nashville, I poured myself into work and family. By 1992, I was a vice president at Southern Bell, one of the youngest in the company, my name in industry journals. I spoke at conferences, advocating for diversity and opportunity, my story a carefully crafted narrative of perseverance, not pain. Sarah, now 16, was thriving, honor roll, soccer captain, her guitar skills rivaling Richard's. Richard and I grew closer, our love deepened by years of shared dreams and challenges. On quiet nights, we'd sit on our porch, Sarah practicing chords inside, and I'd marvel at the life we'd built, a redemption not just from Everett, but from every force that tried to dim my light.